movies from various genres and decades. Stay tuned for this episode. All right. We're back with another MovieNaut episode, where it's episode number 8. And we're going to be talking about our favorite zombie movies. It doesn't matter what era or what kind of zombies they are, just zombies. You know, they could be the ones that like to munch down on people, or ones that kill, or ones that just stand there looking stupid, whatever they want. And we got someone new this time, Lynn Blackson. And tell us a little about yourself and everything.
And why I love zombies.
Yeah.
Okay. I met Gary and we don't remember where, but on the internet, talking about horror books. Gary publishes. He has a publishing company called Tales of Wonder and Dread, and I submitted some short stories to him. And then he took over editing and publication of a trilogy of books that I just put out called The Suffering Sequence. That's been going, we figured, just over 2 years, and has just finished. We just released the 3rd book like a week ago. So the 3 books: A Girl's Gotta Eat, Old Black Water, and Invasive Species. It's urban fantasy horror with shape-shifting, soul-sucking, flesh-eating daemons and the people that try to stop them from taking over humanity's systems of power. That's what I do. I guess I'm a horror writer. I've loved zombies since forever. Like, as far back as I can remember, I've loved horror stories and zombies. I can talk about zombies off the top of my head for hours. So I should be well situated for this discussion we're having tonight.
Yeah, and then of course we're longtime panelists Bill and Gary, and we're going to let Lynn start off the festivities.
All right. I don't think this is going to shock anyone when I say that I love this movie. My first pick is the 1985 joyful, awesome, horrible piece of cheese called Return of the Living Dead. I think everyone who has watched zombie movies, who loves them, has eventually gotten around to this movie. It is a giant chunk of cheese with just exactly that right flavor of silliness, and a couple moments of what I could call real horror. And that's the delicious part, where you can mix in the silliness and then sometimes turn it really dark. It's about a pair of goobers working in a warehouse of medical supplies that accidentally release this toxin from a stored zombie they have, and chaos ensues. Meanwhile, the girlfriend of one of the workers comes to pick him up after work and brings her and her group of friends, which are punk rock weirdos, into the mix. And it is, I think, one of the best examples of people not having their stuff together and under pressure, just really, you can see the stress built in them. It also has some glorious gore, just absolutely wonderful. The one squishy zombie at one point that steps out of the shadows and just says brains is a classic moment of any zombie movie. So that's my first pick.
I think that one almost made my list until I knew it was going on your list, and then I said, okay, I'll get a different one, because I absolutely love that movie too. And I think one of my favorite scenes in there is what I call the zombie takeout, where the one zombie gets on the radio on the ambulances, said send more paramedics, because he's already killed the ones that were there.
Right.
And then a few minutes later he says send more cops.
Yes.
It's like, oh, the paramedics are here. We're fine. Oh, we're not fine. Oh, the cops are here. Now we're fine. Oh, we're not fine. Oh, they got out to the parameter where, you know, they're talking to the military. We're fine. You're not fine.
That movie is just so fun.
And I like how they referenced the Night of the Living Dead, like it was a real thing.
Right.
Right, like the canister from that event.
Yeah, yeah. That was I kind of like that. I thought that was pretty clever. You know, kind of, I guess, one of the earlier, I guess what you call meta, where you know, but it was just I thought it was just perfect.
Yeah, I think some of that comes from the original Night of the Living Dead is mostly George A. Romero and John Russo. You guys can maybe correct me if I'm getting this wrong. And then they did one or two of those sequels, and then they split off, and John Russo did this one, and then Romero, of course, continued with this. I got that right?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah. Well, John Russo retained the Living Dead part of the title, and it was going to be, from what I remember, watching in a documentary, it was supposed to be originally it was going to be a little more serious, but then I forgot what's it, Dan O'Bannon got involved, and they just decided to muck it up a little bit, which is fine. I mean, either way would have been great, you know.
Definitely an interesting comedy horror. Blends it fairly well, which I kind of like when they blend a little comedy. I'm okay with that.
All right, you're up, Bill.
Maya, and I have to is that the first Black Sabbath album in your background? That looks familiar. I've been sitting here. That looks familiar. Where is it? Is that a movie? I'm trying to think. It's a movie. No, it's like anyway. I'm a little sleep deprived, so forgive me. I was at Pennywise and Dropkick Murphys last night. But anyway,
nice.
My first movie is what some call the first zombie movie, but then after doing some research, I guess there was one that came before that's a silent movie. I haven't found a title for that yet. But anyway, White Zombie with Bela Lugosi. You know, I'm classic camp. I do a lot of the older stuff. I'll get to some newer stuff too, though. But yeah, some call this Bela Lugosi's best role, or at least his best role besides Dracula. Some people put this even above Dracula from some things that I read. And he plays like the zombie king. A man and woman wind up on Haiti, and he's turning people into zombies, and he has eyes on the wife and is trying to turn her into a zombie. And it's really very creepy. I like the older zombie movies are very different. They're not trying to eat brains and things. There's usually about curses and formulas and weird things like that. But I think it works. I think it still works well. I write a little horror myself, and if I were to write a zombie movie, I would do it something like that if it was me, at least. But you know, that's my little brand. So that's a lot of times it's hard to find a copy of this with a good soundtrack. Sometimes the sound is kind of muffled. Early talkies, you know, they were still working with the sound equipment. Not sure exactly what happened to that, but if you can get a good sound quality and video quality, it is public domain. It was put out by not one of the major studios, but a lot of people herald it as one of the best of Lugosi's work. Big Lugosi fan. He and you know, there's not a whole lot of movies you can point to that are actually good all the way around, even though I am a big fan, but this is one of them.
I've also seen it referenced that was the first indie low budget or indie non-major film company production that included one of the big horror greats too.
Could be, because he was this is 1932, so he's pretty fresh off of Dracula off of this.
Yeah.
This isn't like later years where he did a lot of, they call them Poverty Row films, and I'll be doing that one next, actually. Not Bela Lugosi, but another Poverty Row. But you know, that was because he was strapped for cash, and you know, that was the only work he could find. And
had to wrestle a bunch of rubber octopuses and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, he was prone to do that in the middle of the night because the major studios needed him during the day. So these Z-grade things would film at night on the same studios and sets. All kinds of fun.
We own a copy of White Zombie, and I've seen it probably in the last couple, like 5 years, I think. It's interesting, I would say that, and usually the later stuff goes into flesh-eating zombies, not the traditional sort of Haitian zombies. And I thought that was interesting to see it in that movie.
Yeah, yeah, the curses and everything,
Yeah.
which I kind of appreciate it. I would still put the Black Cat as Bella's second best, and maybe this third, but it's still very good and very much worth seeing.
On a previous episode, I talked about one zombie movie that actually combined both the flesh eating and the Haitian thing, called Black Demons.
Okay.
And that was from the 90s, and that was a good one. I like that they combined both of those elements into the same film. Not the greatest film, but it was pretty decent.
It'd be an interesting way to do it too.
Yeah.
Combine them that way. So that's my first one, White Zombie. Also a great rock band that came out of the name. So
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to my first one, and I'm gonna go with a comedy as well this time, like Lynn did. And but mine's a Korean movie from 2019 called Zombie for Sale. And it's not dubbed, it's subtitled, but it's I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it starts off, there's like this teenage zombie kind of just stumbling down the road into this little Korean town. And this family finds him and takes him and hides him in a barn. And different members of the family have different views of the zombie. The daughter really thinks he's cute and she wants to marry him and be, everything. And she's trying to treat him like a boyfriend. And the father or grandfather of the family is looking at him as a get rich quick scheme. And the mother of the family wants to knock his teeth out, and so he can't bite anyone because she's terrified of him. And the whole thing it's just completely crazy hijinks that go around this zombie. And just when you think you got an idea of where it's going to go, it goes somewhere else. And it's just a really, really fun movie. I remember watching it at the beginning because I didn't know what I was getting into. And I'm watching it and thinking, what on earth? And it just pulls you in. And these characters are so good. And it's a really fun movie. I highly recommend that one.
Is that usually dubbed or subtitled?
What's that?
I was just saying, is that usually dubbed or subtitled?
It's subtitled, the copy we have anyway. And I've, you know what? I'm not even a huge fan of subtitled movies. A lot of times, if a movie has subtitles, it's got to grab me really fast, or I get really bored of trying to follow it. And that one just grabbed me right at the start.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I don't mind subtitles, but a lot of times I put on movies when I'm doing something else, and if I have subtitles, I got to be watching the movie because you're never going to follow it. But
right.
But yeah, but I understand it takes a little extra effort.
All right. Well, my first one was actually my first one that I saw in the movie theater. I believe it was either 85 or 86, Day of the Dead. I, back home in California, I went to this one small movie theater, and I think there was maybe half a dozen people in the whole theater. It was the first, I think it was the first NC-17 movie that I went to, and I was ready for the movie, and then all of a sudden I hear it from behind me, a baby crying. I'm like, I was like, what the hell? Some couple brings in their baby to come watch Day of the Dead. But this is, for those that don't know, this is the third part of the original trilogy. And it just further, civilization further devolves into I guess, little pockets of groups of people, and this one was kind of scientists and military, and those two factions are kind of at odds with each other, and one of the memorable characters is the guy Bub, you know, the zombie. So it's like and this was probably just when I watched that in the movie theater, you know, the year before I saw Dawn of the Dead on VHS for the first time. So I was like going, oh, cool. I get to see a zombie movie right up on the big screen. And it was, if you ever get a chance, if there's ever a revival house theaters in your area, this is, and they put this on, that's something, you know, to go to. Maybe like a midnight movie or something like that. You know, it's one of the better of the three. I mean, it just keeps on. It seems like at that time Romero was doing one a decade, and then he took a break and then came back with the second trilogy, which I like, but not as much as the first. You know, and got a lot of great makeup and death scenes. The zombies are pretty brutal in this one, you know, compared to Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead, it was almost like going from Disney to to something a little more gory, because the makeup was completely different. It wasn't that gray green face paint, you know. Now it was actually
Rot.
you know,
Yeah.
it started to look like rotting. And honestly, I think I like the way these zombies look here. Later on, zombies, they tend to get a little too technical, and it's like to me, it kind of takes away from, it's a fantasy movie, basically. You know, these things aren't real, so, you know, I mean, make them realistic, but, you know, don't go into like finite details. You know, it's like, you know, people, they're going to rot different ways, you know. And I don't know. I go back to watch. I think I watched, out of all the six of his, I watched that and Dawn the most. I mean, those two for his movies, zombie movies, I go to those ones. And this one's great. And then, of course, if you get the collector's edition, you got a lot of extra features on it. So if you're a fan of the movie and you haven't got, you know, this collector's edition, that's probably a good idea to get it. I'm sure it's probably going to come out on 4K if it hasn't already. You know, for people that out there that are in the 4K game, right, Gary?
Right.
I mean, that would be another discussion to do. But yeah, that's my first choice.
Yeah, I watched that one not too long ago. That one did stand out as really good. I like the science versus military aspect that was going on in that one.
Yeah.
I thought they did that really well, trying to teach the zombies, you know, get them to learn and read and everything, and become human again almost. That was an interesting take. I thought that was.
I think we see, and I don't want to step on anyone else's toes if they mention this, haha. But I think we see shades of that in Shaun of the Dead too, like at the end where.
I haven't actually seen all of Shaun of the Dead, but it does reference a lot of other zombie movies. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Was that zombie named Frank, the kind of intelligent one? Anyone remember?
I don't remember that.
Oh, okay. I thought his name was Frank for some reason.
Maybe it'd be a Frankenstein reference if it was. I'm gonna have to look that up.
All right, back to you, Lynn.
Back to me. Geez, we went fast. All right. This is only kind of a zombie movie. Like a third of it is a zombie movie. I'm going to go back to 1985, and this time I'm going to reference a movie called Life Force. This is the most expensive, best made movie you've never heard of. It was directed by Toby Hooper, who had just gotten off of doing Poltergeist and had previously done Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And in this movie, without the hands of Steven Spielberg kind of guiding him, he proves himself to be what I'm going to call fairly inept. He tries to make like 3 or 4 different kinds of movies that should have never tried to be together. The first quarter or third of it is like an alien movie where they're out exploring a derelict ship. And then there's a middle chapter that is kind of a vampire seductive, can't control yourself under the sway of the sexy vampire. And then the third part is a zombie apocalypse. It is a mess and it is glorious, and it has some of the most wonderful visual effects of the 80s, has an incredible musical score by Henry Mancini. It is, it has a, I said this before at some point, but it's like the video nasties of the early 80s elevated pretty much to fine art. It has all of the, nudity, gore, all that stuff that you expect from a video nasty, but all done very well.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest movie I've ever seen, and I'm shocked at how many people have never heard of it, because I love it in a like weird duckbill platypus kind of way.
Right.
I can remember seeing it on VHS many
Yeah.
years ago, but I don't remember seeing it since.
Yeah. There's also apparently like the American TriStar release is terrible. The longer version that was released in Europe is way better, and mostly what you can get for streaming right now is that longer version.
Yeah, the Shout Factory, the same way they did the collectors, they did of Life Force. And I think it has both of those versions. So, I guess depending on how much time you got, you watch whichever. But yeah, I agree with you. The longer is the better. And those 3 elements do work well. I mean, I don't think I've seen a movie really since then that has 3 completely different elements working
Right.
seamlessly. It was just seamless. It was like it just goes from act 1 to 2 to 3, and without a blink of an eye. And yeah, just like Gary, I saw that on VHS for the first time. I think it's 85. So when it came out on VHS, maybe a year or so after that, so 86 or 87 in that area. Because back then it took like forever for movies to get onto VHS, and unless they tanked at the box office, which
Right. And then they're out for Christmas.
Yeah, they're out for Christmas. And this is also back then, for people that don't know, back in the 80s, movies, if you wanted to buy a movie, it was anywhere from $80 to $100. So you better make sure, that that's a movie that you're going to love, because you spend that kind of money on a dud, you're going to be crying, and you're going to look at your bank account. What happened?
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
It's a good one. It's really good.
It's worth watching once, at least.
At
And
least
trust me, if you're a heterosexual male, there is something in that movie that will almost certainly appeal to you. There's about 8 minutes of a completely nude, full frontal nudity, lovely young actress walking around through the movie. So,
and she's a vampire.
And she's a vampire. She's the actress that played her was a ballet. She was trained in ballet. So she has this weird flowing movement that she does when she walks that's very creepy and unnatural.
Yeah, which is perfect.
Okay. kind of vaguely heard of that one, but I have not seen it. That sounds interesting. My next one is actually to some degree a parody of White Zombie, King of the Zombies, 1941. It's a Poverty Row. The only one he gets third billing, but the only one of any note in it is Manton Moreland. It is a comedy. He's an African American comedian from the 30s and 40s, and his career actually spans all the way into the early 70s. I was looking this up not too long ago. He's incredibly funny in this thing. One nice thing about the Poverty Rows was they would take some of these character actors from some of the major films and give them major roles just because, let's see what this guy can do. Maybe he can make us some money, right? So they gave Manton Moreland a couple of mysteries. For those who don't know, the one place that you might have seen Manton Moreland is in the Charlie Chan movies. He always had his number one son or number two daughter or number three son, whatever. And then he also had Manton Moreland. So if you don't know the Charlie Chan series, he starts off as a taxi driver that Charlie Chan needs to go to the place where he's going to solve the mystery. Moreland winds up helping him solve it. But he also does the comedy relief. He does a lot of the jokes. But they liked him so much, they brought him back. They made him his professional driver. And eventually, in some of the later series, when it goes to Monogram, when they take it over, they actually made Manton Moreland one of his assistants, like him and one of the sons of the two assistants. So they kept promoting him, and they kept him in quite a bit of that series. Anyway, in here, he's hilarious. And I don't think anything he says is in any script written anywhere. I think he's just riffing because, this is back in the 30s and 40s. Think of Abbott and Costello. The monsters are still serious. They're not going to do anything funny. All the other characters are acting, very serious about, there's zombies. Okay, so the plot is a plane crash. Well, actually, the plane is looking for this scientist, and it crash lands on the island where the scientist just happens to be. And then they encounter this guy who's kind of like the Lugosi character, bringing people back to life with zombies and curses and things like that. And Moreland is just riffing off this whole thing. I don't think anything he says is in any script. At one point, he gets hypnotized, and hypnotized, and they make him believe he's a zombie. And they have this line of zombies up against the wall, and he walks up to him, and he just goes, "Move over, boys, you got company." He stands over there with the zombies. He's very underrated actor, very underrated comedian. I find him hilarious. And for a little trivia note, he was almost a third Stooge. When they lost Curly, he had too many seizures. They brought in Shemp. When Shemp passed away, he was like, they actually did stills. There's actually photos of them. He was supposed to be the third Stooge, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, but you can make some kind of guesses around that time frame. That it might not have been acceptable to certain audiences or whatever, but and one thinks back today, he couldn't have done any worse than Joe Besser. I love Joe Besser, but he was a terrible Stooge.
That movie, the what was it called?
This is King of the Zombies.
King of the Zombies. I've seen it before, and you're right. He's the only good part of that movie, and he is fantastic. He has a line where they sit the zombies down in this hall to eat gruel, and he asks for salt. And they're like, some ladies like, you talk an awful lot for a zombie. And he says, "I can't help it, I'm loquacious." And it's just the funniest line in the history of cinema, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the first times a zombie walks by, he goes, "Who was that? Methuselah?" He's just, I don't think any of this could have been in any script. I think he's just riffing. I mean, this is
the
just
whole rest of the movie is serious, like cleft chin, square jawed hero, rock'em sock'em good guy. And here he is just cutting jokes left and right, and it makes the whole movie for me.
It does. It's the only thing good about it. But luckily, he's in almost every scene, so there's not really, doesn't really get too dull. But he should have gotten top billing. He's billed third on this thing. It's ridiculous. I mean, he is the movie. But it's really good if you catch it. It's not much longer than an hour. It streams on Tubi. I'm sure Alpha Video and other places have copies of it as well. If you like for the physical media, but it's great. I really like it. I just watched it like twice in the last couple of months.
Nice. So I guess that brings us back around to me again. I'm gonna go with a completely different sort of zombie for my next choice, which is Reanimator. I mean, they're reanimated bodies. They're not exactly zombies, but it's close enough. Um, the movie came out in '85, and I'm a huge Lovecraft fanatic, which is obvious given a lot of my first book was on Lovecraft music, and I'm actually wearing a Lovecraft shirt. And I didn't know anything about H.P. Lovecraft until this movie and From Beyond, and then I researched Lovecraft, started reading his stuff. Um, Reanimator was actually based on a series of serialized stories, Herbert West Reanimator, that was then later assembled into a book. But which that's one of the only things. I think it might be the only thing from Lovecraft I've never actually read. But you've got this scientist who's got this formula to bring dead people back to life, and he starts going on a frenzy almost of killing people and bringing them back to life, only it's not intentional every time. There's one time where it's sort of intentional because he gets into a fight with the guy, but and brings it back to life just to prove to him that he can do it, because it was a doctor who was one of his cohorts who didn't believe him and was making fun of him and everything. But a lot of the other times the people are getting brought back to life, it's just sort of like, oh crap, they're dead now. I got to bring them back to life. And every time it happens, it turns worse and worse and worse. I remember I saw it in the theater, and I remember at the time people were like, this is just so ridiculously brutal, and just they were making almost protests about it because it was supposed to be so over the top. And it is for the time, but if you watch it now, it's really kind of tame. I mean, there's a little more nudity and a little more sexual content than perhaps you see in a lot of stuff now, but the brutality, the gruesomeness is actually pretty tame compared to what is now. But I remember at the time just how much it really set the tone and was like broke the barriers and was like, very intense for the time. And it still holds up pretty well. I love a few things about it. The soundtrack is just crazy. It fits the crazy action of the movie, and it almost has like a psycho sort of sound at times. And then it's a great balance between comedic and serious. It's very serious, but there's a lot of humor in there too, which I think you almost have to have just because it's so dark. It's a really fun movie, and I think it still holds up well.
Yeah. And of
Jeffrey
course, I'm
Combs,
wearing my
nice.
Miskatonic.
Nice.
Jeffrey Combs, who played the main character, is one of the. I love him in every creepy role he's ever in. So,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then he's in like plays like a million roles in Star Trek too.
yeah.
Yeah.
The scene in Reanimator where the doctor is walking around with his own head in a bag is, you're talking about that line between horror and comedy.
That's comedy
one
right there. He's like stumbling around. Yes. That was some great slapstick.
Oh yeah. I think it kind of falls under in a way because of that kind of like a black comedy type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was one of the first horror movies that I rented on VHS, and I think I lost count how many times I've seen it, and it's each time it's still fresh because and then the recent Blu-ray, I mean that kind of made it even better, because it's nice and crisp and everything.
Oh, now I got to see it on Blu-ray.
It's good.
It is good. I have the Blu-ray too.
Just box them all up and ship them to me to borrow.
There you go.
All right. Well, my next one is a movie called Burial Ground. And this is an Italian zombie movie, and it has one of the funniest lines in the beginning when this archaeologist is digging up these tombs, and and all he's doing is saying, yes, yes, just like talking to himself about how wonderful he is. And then all of a sudden the zombie's coming out and he goes, no, I'm your friend. I'm like, every time I bust up every time I hear that line. I mean, it was probably very unintentional, but it was, I don't know how to pronounce the, who these zombies are, but they're, in the region, in the Rome region, there's an older sect of priests, and I guess they died and they were entombed, and then all of a sudden these, I think there was like 2 or 3 couples come up, and they know the professors, and they're going to just spend the weekend at this nice mansion of his, and it has possibly one of the creepiest kids. He's not a kid. He's an adult little person, and he is creepy to his mother, borderline incestuous, and but it's just and of course the dubbing on his voice just completely off. I mean, and but this is one of the first Italian horror zombie movies that I've seen, and it still, every time I watch it, it is brutal. Just the way, I mean, these zombies are unrelentless. They're slow, but they finally get you. But the people are so stupid. You know, I don't know what it is. It's like some of the women are running, and then all of a sudden there's nothing for them to trip over, but they trip and fall. And but it's just one scene that is particularly brutal, which was the first time I ever seen a zombie actually using a tool. Was one of those siths, and it comes up, and there's the maid was looking out the window, and they just guillotined her, and if you like that kind of, it's gruesome, it's dark, because these people have ways out, but for some reason it just never happens, and it's like they just get themselves into more trouble and more trouble, and but it's called, the full title I think is Burial Ground Nights of Terror, and this one was put out by Separate, and it's looks so much better than it's on, I believe it's on YouTube in a very grainy capacity. But if you wanted to check it out, I mean, just to see what it's all about, it's a good one. I enjoy it. I mean, not the best acting, but if you want best acting, go watch Shakespeare. But that's my number 2. I'm sure you probably have not seen it.
I haven't. Was this from the 70s, early 70s?
No, 81.
81. Okay. I've seen some early 70s Italian horror, and I really like it. They are bloody in a way that a lot of other people weren't doing at the time. So,
well, because I think it was filmed in the late 70s, because the soundtrack has a very late 70s
vibe to it.
Yeah. It doesn't have that cool 80s synth stuff that a lot of the 80s horror movies had, but
John Carpenter.
Yeah,
yeah.
So it's like, I would recommend checking it out.
Cool. Are we back to me?
We are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Uh, my next pick is I'm jumping all the way up to 2008, and I'm doing a small budget horror movie called Splinter. Splinter is one of those movies that, when you're scrolling through the like on streaming or whatever, and it's like fairly well rated. You've never heard of it. Give it 10 minutes, see how it goes. I was shocked how good this movie is. Um, it is low budget and it uses every cent of its budget incredibly well. It's essentially three characters for the whole movie, with a fourth that lasts a quarter and a couple side characters. They end up facing this horrible thing that is infecting bodies and trying to propagate itself. And they end up in a little gas station in the middle of the woods in a little puddle of light with unknown horrors all around them. And it's this guy who's like a convict, and his strung out girlfriend abduct this nice couple called Polly and Seth, and it's chaos and brutality. And they for being a low budget film, they know what to point the camera at and what not to linger on, because we don't have the budget for it.
Right.
But they use it really well. The acting, the three primary actors in this are fantastic. Can't say enough good stuff about it.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that. That when you said Splinter, I was thinking, okay, I think I know what you're talking about. And then when you said the gas station, okay, or convenience, that. And how it, even if like a limb was cut off,
Mm-hmm. The limb kept going. Yeah.
Yeah, it kept mutating into something. Didn't it mutate into something really big?
Yeah, like took a bunch of parts from different people. And
yeah, I kind of.
yeah, it's what gore there is in it is pretty horrible. And like I said, they used their budget really well on a couple of really good effects. And then some, they used a little bit of shaky cam to hide stuff. And yeah, and it is primarily sold, the entire movie is sold by three actors doing a great job. That's it. That's all I got for that one. Any
That's a good one.
comments?
That's a good one. I like that one. I wasn't even
like
sure
it.
anyone else seen it.
I like that when they
I
use
think
the camera angles to hide the special effects when
Yeah.
when you're on a budget. It really, and not just because I like the lower budget, which actually I do, but but the other reason is because it works better for the viewer, because with CGI you can make the monster look like whatever you want, but when you don't show the monster, everyone who watches it has a different vision of the monster, and it psychologically it works better for the audience.
Yeah. As soon as you show the monster, it stops being scary, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it loses a lot. So anyway, that brings me up, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm still in the Caribbean. I think this is my last one of those, I swear, because I go in chronological order. Val Lewton kind of took over the horror genre after Universal kind of gave it up. There's some overlap there, but anyway, this is after Universal gave it up. So I'm going with I Walked with a Zombie. Val Lewton usually used Boris Karloff, kept him working and kept him earning decent pay, while Bela Lugosi was slumming it up in Poverty Row. But Boris is not in this, so he's got nobody in this. But as the title indicates, it's a very literary movie. This thing plays out like a novel, really, which is what I really love about it. And it's very atmospheric, a little slow, but fairly easy to follow. This woman is debilitated by a disease. She's in the Caribbean, and they start to suggest voodoo as a cure. The way I describe that, it gives up a lot because it really unwraps very, very slowly. She slowly goes into, what voodoo is and who the people are and some of the victims of voodoo. And, there's a lot that can be made out of out of these these first three films really that I looked at with African American culture and voodooism. Sometimes, and some has been written about using it for slavery, to control people was kind of some of the idea. That was kind of some of the fear anyway, where some of these rumors about where it came from in Haiti came from. So that kind of comes kind of interesting. And it does have that overdub, almost like a film noir, except it's a woman's voice because she's the one, starting out with the line, "I walked with a zombie, and this is my story and how it unfolds and everything." Really atmospheric. And if you don't know Val Lewton, The Body Snatcher, that one had, that's probably his most famous one. Boris Karloff is in that one. And Henry Daniell, who was opposite Sherlock Holmes, the villain in some of those movies. And he also did The Cat People and the sequel, The Curse of the Cat People. So he really did a lot with horror during that period. And he has some depth. And this is one that's, after you get past those three that I just mentioned, those are probably the first three when you start with a Val Lewton. This should be the next thing you should watch because it's really good, really super atmospheric. He does the atmosphere just as well as any of the Universals do in their heyday. I believe it's 47. I forgot to write down the year of that one, but so that'd be like about a year after Universal gave it up in 46. Definitely worth watching. And I believe Val Lewton was a novelist as well at some point before he became a director or a producer, actually. It's interesting because he's a producer, but he kind of becomes the auteur of most of his movies, unlike usually it goes to the director. But apparently he was very hands-on with his producing. But anyway, it's one of my favorites of his. After you get past some of the Karloff picks.
I might have to go after we're done here and watch that.
Yeah, that one's it was on Tubi. I actually do have that one on DVD. I should have brought it down. Yeah, it's really good. It's a little slow, but it's fairly easy to follow, and the atmosphere just, it's just wow for that one. That's what I have.
Okay, well, that brings us back around to me. I'm again going with a different type of zombie again. 1984 movie Trancers, which I believe was Full Moon, and it's kind of a crazy mix of movies. I mean, it's very 80s. It's got almost a Terminator kind of thing because this detective gets sent back in time to stop this criminal, and he's also like the future is like almost a 1940s noir movie, and so he's like a noir detective very much. I mean, he's got the whole vibe going. His name is Jack Death, and he's hooks up with this girl in the past when he gets to the past, because the way you travel in time is you go into the body of your ancestor, and his ancestor was having a one-night stand with this girl who's played by Helen Hunt in what I think is one of her first roles. And so she winds up getting caught up in this whole adventure, and he's chasing this guy from the future who can turn people into zombies, mindless zombies who do whatever he wants them to do. And he sends them out killing people. And it's just a really fun movie because I think it does such a good job of combining these different genres into something that works somehow. And I love the detective's smartass attitude. It works really well. And I don't know, the whole thing's just fun. I watched it again probably, I don't know, 8 months ago, and it still holds up really well.
And one of the early full moons have that feeling, that holds up. I think the ones later on, like in the late 90s and 2000s, are kind of like, but yeah, those are good ones. I think what are they up to? Like they were up to like number 7 or something like that.
Something like that. And I don't think I ever saw any of them past the second one.
Yeah, I think they just start rehashing the whole thing. But yeah, that was a good one.
I haven't seen it, Have to
Oh,
put
you
that one on my list too.
You should see it. I think you would like it.
All right. My next one is part of this double issue, so I'm just gonna. It's Hell of the Living Dead. Hell of the Living Dead is basically, in two ways, a ripoff of Dawn of the Dead. With the soundtrack, they use the Goblin soundtrack. Also, the same plot line, the SWAT team, but these one of the guys is completely ridiculous in the in one scene. They're now they're in the Caribbean or something like that, and this one scene, one of the SWAT guys, all of a sudden he's looking through these clothes, and he puts on a tutu and starts dancing. And I'm like going, I just said, did I just see that? And
Well, that came out of nowhere.
yeah, it came completely out of nowhere. And it was done by Bruno Mattel. How do you? But he uses a pseudonym of Vincent Dawn. You know, and it does got good atmosphere to it. I mean, if you take away the fact that it's kind of a ripoff of Dawn of the Dead, the only thing is with this one, they kind of explain how the zombies happen. You know, and it was kind of funny how it was done by infected rats in a nuclear power plant, and it's so weird that how this is a double feature with another rats. It's good. I mean, it has a different name on if you to watch it on Prime. I think it's called Night of the Zombies or something like that. I mean, it had like different names in different regions, but that's the one that I knew it by, and I saw that VHS, rented it so many times, and then when it came out, that was the first DVD that came out, and it's also on a standalone DVD, Blu-ray, excuse me. And while it has this areas in the Caribbean, there's no voodoo zombies. It's just, but they explain it in the same way, you know, in Dawn of the Dead, you know, the what is it? When there's no more room in hell, you know, the dead walk the earth. It's kind of in that lines that says that a lot of the zombies are of a local tribe because they got infected by the rats and also the nuclear power plant leaking, of course, you know. And I think what it had to do too is like that was like the big scary thing back in the 80s is nuclear power plants. You know what can happen. So they just took it to the next level. It's like, hey, it's gonna create zombies. And they have some pretty brutal kills in it. Makeup is pretty decent, but you know, acting, especially that one guy, I don't know what. It's almost, I think, kind of falls under that category of what Bill, King of the Zombies, where I think they just said, just go for it, you know, whatever you want to do. And of course, what I don't get is, okay, they're using these automatic rifles, and the guns are in their holster, but they're using automatic rifles at close range. The zombies are like right here. I mean, how are you going to pull up the rifle to take care of it? You know, you get your gun out and you take care of it. But it's a typical Italian zombie.
So
That's,
I looked at, I cheated and looked at the IMDb. It says Virus is one of the alternate titles.
yeah, yeah.
1986. Yeah. I cheated. I looked at Google, but throw it
Thank you
out
for
there.
doing the reference work for us.
Yeah.
They pay. That's what they don't pay me for.
Yeah,
we're
it's
gonna double that zero pay.
I want
two
triple.
zeros. 3 zeros.
That's right.
Oh, that's my,
And besides that, if you get tired of it, you can say, "Oh, the hell with the Living Dead."
yeah, the hell of it. Yeah. Which
Anyway.
I'm amazed. I'm amazed that they got. I think it was probably released, probably in Italy as Hell of the Living Dead, and then here Virus because of John
Great.
Russo owned the right of the Living Dead. Probably only owned it in the United States.
You're owned even after you're dead.
Yeah,
For 70 years, actually, literally.
yeah.
Just ask Steamboat Willie.
Yep. Is it back to me?
That's better.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can let my
okay.
dog out. Give me 1 second.
What's that? We lost Bill.
My dog's barking to go outside.
Oh.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
listening. I'm still in the room.
Okay. He's been dragged off by zombies. Don't listen to him. She's trying to save us from the horror. He's probably flailing and losing organs as we speak. My next pick is called Train to Busan from 2016. It is for people who are really into zombie movies, I think they know it. But for people who maybe aren't, I'm going to say this and it's going to draw a lot of flack. Train to Busan is the best zombie movie ever made. There's a little girl in there, and I don't know where they found her, but she plays a character named Sue Ann. She's about 10 or 11. And I don't know where they found that actress, but she made me feel real human feelings. And that's not cool. In the middle of a zombie outbreak, this little 10-year-old girl tore out my heart. It wasn't a zombie, it was a little 10-year-old girl. And I wanted to wrap her in a blanket and feed her soup through the whole movie. It's a little slow to start. It builds the character of the father as a terrible dad. And then he spends 15-20 minutes at the beginning of the movie proving how terrible he is, and then trying for the rest of the movie to make up for it. So has the actors who play the zombies are very talented physical actors. They do the jerking and the contorting and things, and it'll freak you out because humans aren't supposed to do that. Everything, the emotional impact of this movie is the best in any zombie movie in my opinion. And had it been in English instead of in Korean, I probably would have collapsed and needed therapy from watching this movie.
Is he in the fields, huh?
All the feels.
Yeah, and it had his a prequel cartoon, and then a sequel one, something Peninsula,
Yeah.
But yeah, that one, that was really good for a modern zombie movie. They kind of, I just noticed that a lot of modern zombie movies are being too silly, and it's not, how do you say, it's not landing,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh God, that, what are they doing now? But this one, I liked that it was serious, and one of the few fast zombie movies I like.
Yeah.
And I really don't like fast zombies because when you're dead,
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that this is in the movie, it's such a rapid pace from contracting it to turning
Yeah,
that you're still alive. And
yeah.
the one of the things in this movie that is terrifying is that they just throw themselves. They'll throw
Oh, yeah.
themselves off balconies or under train cars with completely no thought to their own self-preservation. They'll smash into glass or into a pole or
Oh, yeah.
anything. And it's brutal in that it's not just the uninfected that get injured. The zombies themselves just it's insanity. So
They're like little berserkers. Just
yeah,
I have, it's kind of almost like if they were blind and they were just running and
right.
just didn't have any sense of direction, just using their nose to smell
Right.
where there's food. And now that you say it, okay, they're more infected than they are.
Right. It's kind of almost hyper rabies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess kind of in the same way as, what's it, 28 days and weeks later
Yeah.
type of thing.
Which is what I think of when I think of fast zombies. Is I think of 28 Days Later as sort of the origin of fast zombies. No. Okay,
I'll
what's
tell you.
first?
My next pick, but wait
Okay.
till
We'll get to it.
Okay. Shoot, do I have time to let this dog in? It just banged at the door now.
Go ahead. We'll chat for a bit.
Sorry
Go
about
ahead.
Actually, let me just, as long as he's doing that, I want to run in the other room and get a pop because I'm thirsty.
okay.
Well, let's sit here and talk about fast zombies, but don't ruin yours. Don't.
No. My only thing with fast zombies is, especially if they're zombies, rigor mortis.
Right.
But if they're infected, they're, like you said, they're not dead. They're just infected.
Yeah. Talking about the rigor mortis thing, that's one of the things that Return of the Living Dead has a really good scene about rigor mortis where there's a mortician actually breaking the rigor mortis out of a corpse and it's making that gross crunchy sound, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Interestingly, since we're talking about the infected versus dead of the movies I talked about, White Zombie and I Walked with a Zombie, they're just infected. King of the Zombies, they actually do say they're dead. So that might be the first one where they have dead zombies, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that. But anyway,
Okay, so
hopefully this dog lets me get through this because I have a really good story about this movie. So I'm finally getting this out of the Caribbean over here on my end. And I'm going to really close to my hometown, Erie, Pennsylvania. Night of the Living Dead, of course, was filmed in Pittsburgh, just 2 hours south. One of the things I love about Night of the Living Dead is, the newscaster. I don't know if you guys know him as anything more than Bill Cardile. Really, he's Chilly Billy Cardelli is what we call him up there because he had a hosted horror movie show. He was a wrestling announcer. He was Pittsburgh of the 1970s. They used to have T-shirts of him and everything. So anyway, when he's doing his little announcing thing, they scroll a little down at the bottom of the screen. They scroll all the places you're supposed to go, and I'm like, hey, I know where that. I know I've been to those places. So anyway, let's fast forward to the 1990s. I'm in a bar in Pittsburgh, freshman or sophomore in college. My girlfriend, who is now my wife, has a sister who lives there with her brother-in-law, and we're all at a bar, chatting. Somebody comes over to the bar and says, "Is anybody here a horror movie fan?" And everybody at the table points to me, and he said, "Hey, we have Kyra Shawn over here. It's her birthday party from Night of the Living Dead. Would you like to attend? We were supposed to have a bunch of people here. Nobody showed up." So I go over and I got to sit and talk with Kyra Shawn, have a few beers with her and a little bit of her cake. In front of the cake had her image that's on a lot of the posters, with the dark eyes and the zombie, the blonde hair and everything. And the cake cutter was the gardening tool that she kills her parents with in the movie.
Perfect.
So I had to grab the low-hanging fruit of Night of the Living Dead, the first, some would call that the first modern zombie movie, right? When we got out of the, these infections and curses and things like that, and got into, what everybody considers a zombie movie today, anyway. But it's really dystopian. I don't think I have to say too much about it. A lot of the other movies kind of follow what they did. That's kind of most of my story of Night of the Living Dead. Fast forward actually once again to last year, I went to StokerCon, and they had a table in honor of George A. Romero, the George A. Romero Foundation. They have a museum near Pittsburgh. Used to be in the house where that movie was filmed. Then they moved to, what was it, the mall that Dawn of the Dead was filmed. Anyway, it's not even there anymore because I don't think that mall's there anymore. But anyway, I don't know where the museum is now, but they still have one because they were there. So I'm like, hey, I told them the story I just told you guys. And at the end of it, he says, I organized that party.
How small is that town?
I know, right? It's Pittsburgh. It's like,
It's
you include the
Pittsburgh.
sun, it's
Literally
1.5 million
everyone,
people.
Yeah,
What's that?
everyone knows everyone in Pittsburgh. It's that
Yeah,
size of town.
where
When
everybody
it comes to Night of the Living Dead, apparently, right? I mean, it's, it seems like it's a pretty good sized city, but sometimes when it comes to Night of the Living Dead, maybe not so much.
I went to Art Institute of Pittsburgh for a short time, and Tom Savini, is that his name, was doing special effects teaching at the college while I was there. So that was like 1990, if that puts it into time frame.
Yeah. This would be about 95, 96, I think, somewhere in there, somewhere around there. So, if you did want to know, when she's eating her parents, that's a big ham bone. That's what she told me. She said, for the most part, I was just laying on a table for a couple of weeks. That was most of my job in the movie. And then, I had a little scene where she packs up her parents and everything. But that's my little story, and that's kind of why I really want. But Night of the Living Dead really is a cult movie. I mean, it was supposed to be a local movie. It was not supposed to have a national release. A lot of movies used to be just local. Of course, it exploded into what everybody knows about today. But it really was never intended to do that.
that was another one of those movies that was so controversial when it came out.
Absolutely, yeah. I've written a lot about it. A lot of people make a lot to do about what's his name? Dwayne Jones, is that his name? The black actor who's the lead, and having those arguments. If you don't know, originally he wasn't the chosen actor. It was supposed to be a white actor who backed out at the last minute. So all of that subtext that we've added to the racial tensions which do exist on screen, totally unintentional.
It weren't even written in the. It wasn't even in the script then.
I don't believe. No, it wasn't intentional. It was, it just makes you think about, when a white actor says the same lines as a black actor, it takes on a different context.
Yeah, the subtext really can change.
Changes everything.
Now I have to watch that movie again and watch it with that in mind, picturing a white actor in that part and see how differently I would see that.
Yeah, it blows your mind when you think of that too, that it wasn't intentional. And it was also one of the I can't say the first, but one of the first times that they gave a role to a black actor for the simple reason that he gave the best reading, not because they were looking for a black actor to do this. And that is the story that, because I did some papers on this movie too a couple of times, and that was one of the research that I found, was that they said he just gave it to him because he read the lines best, better than anybody else, especially after we lost our original intended person who was supposed to do this.
And it's actually because you and I, we all of us, I think, were alive in that time, and it's like you didn't see a ton of heroic black roles, especially when the black guy was the one making the right calls and the white people were the ones being idiots. You just didn't see like that. It was actually kind of groundbreaking, and now to know that it wasn't even intended that way.
No, it was unintended, but it makes it better, really. It makes
happy accident.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, You know, it's like Jaws. The shark didn't work. That made the whole movie. Sometimes those little accidents make things better.
Yep. The same thing with Jaws I was talking about with Splinter. Don't show the monster. It's
Yeah.
scarier.
Everybody has their own image of what that monster is because we all imagine what we're afraid of. That makes it better. So that's my Night of the Living Dead thing. My little personal story. Why I wanted to do that when I know it seems like the low hanging fruit, but hey, I had a personal story I want to throw in there and share with everyone. So.
You know what? And somebody had to do that. When you're talking,
really, I mean,
somebody has to do it. It's mandatory. And I figured you would be the guy for it anyway.
There you go. And I do love that movie. I mean,
I think everybody does. I mean,
yeah, it's really groundbreaking in a lot of ways. I don't want to give away the ending, but
yeah,
man, I remember the first time I watched it. It was just, I thought I'd gotten to the end, and when you think you get to the end, you're not at the end.
no,
Yeah.
that final scene is gut wrenching, and it's
brutal.
Brutal, yes, it's brutal.
And that's also one of those movies you can watch again and again and again and not get tired of it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. But that's another one, like Reanimator, where it was like it was so over the top at the time, and now it looks really tame as far as the effects, and stuff like that. But at the time, people were freaking out about it.
Well, do you guys think that the Comics Code Authority that shut down EC Comics and stuff and really tamed a lot of that stuff down, turned down the dial on monster movies so that when they started to go beyond what was acceptable in comic books, you're starting to see blood and gore again? Do you think that was what this backlash was with the Night of the Living Dead?
Maybe. I mean, there was also, what's the one with what was the code that they put in with movies? When did that?
That would be the Hays Code. Yeah.
They stopped paying attention to the Hays Code.
Yeah, it starts in 34 and then kind of fades as you get into the later 60s. They just kind of stop listening to it. Slowly, though, they kind of,
I'm not listening.
Yeah, let's see if
thank goodness.
I think it was more a case of let's see what we can get away with.
Yeah, it started to be more and more. One of the big ones was Bonnie and Clyde, where that guy gets shot in the face, was one of the really big breaking of the Hays Code that they actually slipped through that didn't get sent back to them.
That was a brutal scene.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my fourth one.
Okay, well, that brings it back around to me, and I'm going to go with another classic that sort of had to be brought up. Again, different type of zombie, but The Evil Dead from 1981. It was basically Sam Raimi's first film, Bruce Campbell's first film, and, that one's, I remember that was so crazy. It was another one where everybody said how gory it was and stuff. And yes, it is. But again, for now, looking back on it, not so much, the stop motion claymation type stuff they did doesn't work that well, but it did for the time. I love how, again, it's not Lovecraft, but they've got the Necronomicon, and it almost is Lovecraftian in the way it works. And I think some of the creepiest stuff in that movie for me isn't even the animated dead. It's like the stuff in the woods where the roots and the branches of the trees are moving, and you hear this voice in there going, join us. And it's like, that's just so creepy. I think, and the way they sort of move the camera forward really fast at the cabin when they were doing that, it's like, it just worked so well. Just very, very creepy, supernatural creepiness. And that movie is just, again, that's a fun movie, and it's got some humor, but it's actually much darker than the later ones in the series.
Yeah,
it really is. Yeah, that's I consider the serious one of the trilogy. And I was a little late to the party on Evil Dead. It was just a couple of years ago on a Halloween. I started watching, what I consider newer movies, which would be 80s. Sorry, and I watched that one, and that's one that I actually have fallen in love with that one. That's a really good movie. And now I watch it almost every Halloween because
Yeah.
That one and the second one. Uh, the third one's okay, but
I'm not as crazy about the second one because half the movie is basically retelling the first one.
it is.
Right.
I think that had to do with legal reasons. There was something he wasn't allowed to use footage from the first one. So it's
Yeah.
like, I just got to redo it. I prefer the second one, mostly because it had a little better budget and a little better effects. And I think that Raimi's style had evolved a little more. But the first one, like, he's a kid and, he's just doing it. There are effects that he did, like, I think it's in the second one, where there's a camera pull away from Ash, who's laying in a puddle of mud, and the camera's spinning. It's this beautiful twisting shot. Would have cost millions. Like, how did you do that? Well, we tied the camera to a rope and wound it up and then started pulling real fast, and it just started spinning.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of creativity that he was showing early in his career that I thought was great.
Reminds me of that old joke. When the United States realized they couldn't write with a pen in outer space, they spent millions of dollars to create a pen that could write at zero gravity, and the Russians used a pencil.
Yep. Yeah, there's
I remember seeing Evil Dead on VHS, and I was like, so I think it was 82 or 83 when it came out on VHS. I was like, it was like one of the first ones I saw, and that and another one called Warning Sign, and both of them are like, I mean, one Warning Sign had a more of like a made for TV feel, but still, you can see later on, Resident Evil used a lot of what was going on in Warning Sign. But Evil Dead, watching that, oh my God. I had to, at the time, I was still living downstairs with my parents, so I had to wait till they went away, especially my mom, because if she saw what I was watching, I mean, I got in trouble for watching Dawn of the Dead because my cousins were up visiting, and I had went out and rented the movie the night before they showed up, and I wanted to watch it before I returned it. I was watching it, and of course I'm watching it while eating pizza.
And I might be wrong about this, but I think that original Evil Dead was kind of like Night of the Living Dead, where I believe it was supposed to be a smaller movie, like a local or maybe at least regional. I don't think it was supposed to be a huge national thing. It's just one of those things that caught on. I think.
I actually heard it was a college project, but I'm not 100%.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
Yeah,
I looked up their ages. I believe Campbell's only about 19 or 20 when he's filming that thing.
Yeah, they were kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that sounds about right to be a college project.
If you're looking it up, there was a 30-minute version of it that he did like the year before for.
Yeah.
For,
I can't remember what that was called.
Something Within the Woods or something like that.
Something in the Woods, or yeah.
And it had similar things going on, but it was instead of I think it dealt with a Indian burial ground, everything, it was just, it's not on anything except for YouTube, and it is grainy, jumpy, and everything. Not how they filmed it, but it's just a copy is like maybe like a million generation copy that someone put up there. And
Prime gets every once in a while, has brought it back now and again, and then it comes and goes, because I caught it on Prime last Halloween.
Yeah.
And there's also the Internet Archive, but they don't always have the rights to what they have. So keep that in mind for if you have an ethical issue with that. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
All right. Well, I guess it's back to me, and the movie that you thought that the Fast Zombie happened. Let's go back to the early 80s with Nightmare City. That's an Italian film, another one. And this one, it starts off with a big farmer landing, and they're awaiting some scientist, and all of a sudden the doors open, and it's just almost quiet. All of a sudden, the zombies start running out. They have hammers, axes, and they just start brutally killing people, grabbing machine guns. So they're now they're able to use guns, and they're running at full speed. And I was like going, this is nuts. This was a completely nuts thing. I mean, and just the way they ended it was like a retelling of the beginning. So you didn't know where it was like a chicken and the egg type of thing. Which one came first? Was this a dream sequence? And then, but it was something that the professor was working on some sort of potion or something, and it turned them into a zombie. And the makeup on this, it was just almost like someone just like threw stuff together right on top of for these zombies, because they kind of look like, some of them kind of look like the literal pizza face. I mean, it just looks. Probably the lowest budget kind of a zombie thing you can look, but it's just the brutality of the kills. It's like ripping people's scalps. I believe that, yeah, ripping their scalps off, and and it's like, oh my god, it's like this one. Let's see. This, for what I'm told, this edition on this Raro video is not the best looking copy. They have another one out there, but I am not one of these double dippers unless they come out with a lot of cool special effects and special features. I don't like getting it again. But it's if you want, basically, I think this is possibly the first Fast Zombie, and this was 80 or 81. Yeah, it's just early 80s, and they're just crazy, crazy fast. So when I saw later on, when I saw the Fast Zombies, not so much the 28 days and weeks later ones, but that Dawn of the Dead remake, I looked at that and I'm like going, I've seen this before. Where did I see it? And then I go, oh, this one, Nightmare City. So that's another good low budget Italian zombie movie, which I love those ones from the 80s, because they're just, some of them are just so bad that they're good.
I have a real love for cheap horror movies all around, but cheap zombie movies particularly.
Well, especially when they're kind of inventive with the storyline, like this one, just kind of interesting how the beginning is also the end, and it's like, you got to watch it a couple times to kind of try to figure it out for yourself, what was the entry point, and so that's my number 4.
Awesome.
So back to you.
Okay. I'm sorry that I didn't get to discuss this with you all during your Christmas horror movie discussion. This is the rarest thing you've ever heard of. It is a Christmas movie, it is a zombie movie, and it is a teen high school musical. It's called Anna and the Apocalypse. And I have to kind of give a history of how the movie came to be. There was a writer named Ryan McHenry who did a short film that's released on YouTube if you want to go watch it, called Zombie Musical. And on the strength of that movie, he got the budget to do a full length version of it. He wrote the movie, and in pre-production, he died of bone cancer. I understand, although I can't find it, that in one of the scenes, one of the characters is dancing through a graveyard and dances past his grave. So it's kind of neat if you can get, in your own horror movie by being buried. But it's sad because he was a promising writer, I think. Anna and the Apocalypse is what happens when you take a teen musical, not as actually almost as dirty as something like Grease with all of its sexual innuendo, not the pristine like Disney teen musical. And then you invade it with a full-on Shaun of the Dead zombie apocalypse. The writer very clearly has Shaun of the Dead. They knows this movie. It references it a few times. It has something of the same flavor. But this spin is, I think, incredibly fun. And when you think it's going to be a silly teen musical romp, it gets really dark. Like, oh, it's an actual zombie apocalypse and people are being murdered that you care about. So great fun, Christmas movie, musical, zombies. I don't know what else to tell you. It's fantastic. That's it. And then a lot of crickets.
A lot of cricket. I think I saw it listed on one streaming site, and I wasn't sure about it. So I'll, if it's still available out there somewhere, I'll check it out.
It will be a thing that either delights and tickles your fancy and makes you laugh and be really concerned for the characters, or I think with Gary it will probably really not be your thing.
Yeah, he knows I'm not a fan of musicals at all. I despise it. So yeah, I probably would not like it.
I'm okay with that.
As he goes to Amazon ordering it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with musicals. I just, I got to know it's a musical going in. I
Yeah.
got to know what I'm getting into. So it's
Highly recommend it. There's actually one of the musical numbers. One of the main character, Anna, turns and breaks the fourth wall by looking straight at the camera and says, "This is not the story you've been dreaming of, the one where you get all you want. There's no such thing as a Hollywood ending." And it's like, ooh. There's a line in Game of Thrones where one of the characters says, "If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention." It feels like that.
That's cool.
So many of these zombie movies have terrible endings, especially after Night of the Living Dead. Kind of started that dystopian ending that,
Oh, the Return of the Living, the Return of the Living Dead is one of the most heartbreaking endings to any.
I remember that ending. Yeah, it's anyway. That makes a really good segue into my last movie, actually. A really good transition. I went with The Dead Don't Die from 2019. So I do like to try to throw in at least something modern in there once in a while. This stars Adam Driver and Bill Murray. I love those two actors, especially Bill Murray. I'm a huge Bill Murray fan going all the way back. Caddyshack, the Saturday Night Live, everything. He gets a lot of bad press. He's an improv actor. And the interesting thing to me in watching this is, my wife was an actress at one point. Actually, when I met her, she was in high school acting. But so she tells me a lot about, different styles of acting. Bill Murray's an improv actor. He's kind of like the man to Moreland, who he doesn't follow a script. You give him a basic idea of where the scene's supposed to go, and he'll get you there, but he's not going to read the lines that you wrote. And if you film it 15 times, he's going to do that scene 15 different times and drive everybody crazy. So everybody hates Bill Murray today because everything has to be so precise in Hollywood today, which is another reason I love him. But you know, anti-disestablished parody. So anyway, Adam Driver is a very different actor as well. He's a method actor. He's in character whether you're filming or not. So it's interesting to see these two styles actually mesh together. This is a comedy. It's a very dry comedy. I love dry comedy, so I've seen a lot of dry comedy. This is the driest comedy I think I've ever seen. I mean, they are deadpan with every line. And the reason it was such a good transition is because Adam Driver's character. So Adam Driver and Bill Murray are the sheriff and deputy of this small hick town, and of course they get infected by zombies, and everybody's trying to prepare for what they're going to do with zombies, but they're all a bunch of rednecks and they're really dumb and they do all the dumbest things and won't wind up getting killed. And Adam Driver throughout the whole movie just keeps shaking his head going, "This isn't going to end well," with every decision that's made, and of course it doesn't. And it kind of plays on a lot of the stereotypes, a lot of the what I guess by now would be called cliches of these zombie movies, kind of like a Shaun of the Dead kind of thing again, I guess. So I highly recommend it. My wife loves it as well. She loves Adam Driver though. So you know that method acting, you know, you're in character at all times. It's kind of like pro wrestling, how it used to be. You know, they'd be in a restaurant and somebody said, "Hey, that's the Crusher." Say, "Oh, hey, get out of here." You know, it's that kind of thing. You know, that's method acting. Constantly in character, never out of character. Sometimes that drives people on set crazy too, but not as much as people who don't like to follow lines like Bill Murray.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He's so dry, so deadpan through this whole, and he is more deadpan than I've ever seen him. It's really good.
Yeah.
I think I need to see that one.
Yeah, it's good. Like exactly like you said, you know, just complete deadpan, and it's
very dry. Yeah, it's
okay. I gotta ask. I watched about the first 20 minutes of it and got really bored. Does it pick up or what?
It does pick up after a little. The beginning is a little slow, but it does pick up after a bit. You know, it plays on almost every zombie trope, every cliche. I don't know. Can I say aliens? Am I giving away too much? Are thrown in there somewhere? You know, they break the fourth wall a couple of times, I believe, later on in the movie. But it's, you know, I find it fun. But I love, you know, really dry deadpan humor. So, you know, maybe it's quirky, but so am I. So, you know, I identify. But
that's one of the more recent ones that I like. I mean, because honestly after the 2010, there's very few zombie movies I like.
Yeah, I think the genre finally started to slow down somewhere around there. It was really on fire for the first half of the 2000s. You know, 2000 to 2010 or so, it was
actually
done anything and it would sell. It seemed like for a while anyway.
Books, well, after Walking Dead started in 2010, it was going for.
Well, yeah, that's true. Maybe a couple years after that, even then. That started.
Yeah,
I was thinking that started a couple years before that. But
do y'all feel that it got oversaturated?
What's that?
Do y'all feel that the genre got oversaturated?
Yeah, everybody was doing, you know, probably directors that wouldn't even touch a zombie movie a decade or two earlier were doing it. I think it was like how did you say, in vogue, you know?
Yeah.
And it kind of soured a lot of people to zombie movies. Me, to a degree. I mean, I still like zombie. I'll give it a chance, but if the humor, if you're making a comedy, if the humor's not there, it's almost as bad as a boring movie, because it just doesn't, the jokes don't land. You know, they just kind of go and off. You know, and it's like, but that one definitely, I'll have to say that's a recommended one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Murray these days is more of an acquired taste, but if you have acquired the taste for what he does, you will like it. And I do. I'm a Bill Murray fan. Always
I
have been.
I actually love Bill Murray on the screen. I think he's hilarious. The Ghostbusters, and I just about everything. I don't like all the movies he's in, but I like him in everything he's in.
Yeah. That's probably a good way to say it, actually.
Speaking of Bill Murray, have you seen an older one? I don't remember what year it was, maybe mid '80s, called Razor's Edge.
No,
I've heard of that. I don't think I have caught that.
It's a remake, I think from a '40s film. It's a war movie, and it was like I think it was his very first serious role. I mean, no comedy whatsoever in it. Maybe just like maybe some human comedy things, that but not where it's just kind of silly stuff. And
Yeah.
I remember seeing that at about the same time that Robin Williams did one called Seize the Day, which is
Yeah, I
kind
know
of like
Robert
a play.
Williams did some serious acting too.
Yeah, but when I saw those two, I mean, almost like back to back, because I worked at a video store and I was seeing all the horror movies, all the science fiction, all the action, most of the martial arts. I wasn't, so I go, okay, well, drama is next. So I saw, oh, Bill Murray, oh, Robin Williams in the drama. Oh, cool, let's try it out. And the Robin Williams one was pretty depressing.
Mm.
Just that character that just couldn't catch a break.
I did see. I did watch Bill Murray in Lost in Translation, which I believe is the only film where he's actually. I believe he's nominated for Academy Award in that one.
I think
as
so.
like a supporting role, but and he's actually it's semi-humorous. It's more of a romantic comedy. He's not. You would expect him to kind of be in the romance, but he's not really that part of it. But he's a friend of the girl in the story. But he's a decent actor, actually. I like him. He pulls that one off. I thought that one was decent. Know what you're getting into. That's always my message of everything. It is a romantic comedy. If you don't like that genre, and I generally don't, but because it had Bill Murray, I'm like, I'm gonna give this a shot. And I thought it was decent. It was good.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
okay, so I guess that brings us back around to me for my final one, which both of you have just mentioned in yours, and you can't do this show without doing Shaun of the Dead. Come on, 2004. You got Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, and they nailed so many of the zombie things so well. And just one of them I didn't even notice it till probably the third or fourth time I saw the movie, is when they're on the phone with Sean's mother, and he's like, "We're coming to get you, Barbara." And I'm like, oh my God, it's a total Night of the Living Dead. It's like, oh my God, that's perfect. But I didn't even catch it the first couple times I saw it. And I love, there are scenes early where you think you're seeing a zombie and it's just a normal person being all slovenly,
Right.
And then when they do start seeing zombies, they're not even realizing they're zombies at first, which I don't know. The whole thing is just, I just love it. It's so funny, and I wouldn't really say it's scary, although it's pretty bleak at times, but it's just such a good movie.
That sounds like it'd be a really good feature with The Dead Don't Die. Actually, they do a lot of the same things. I believe Shaun of the Dead comes first for anybody who's keeping score on those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Shaun of the Dead, I think, set a new bar for the standards of particularly zombie comedy. But Edgar Wright and that whole Cornetto trilogy, Gary and I talked about this a little bit last week. But if you haven't seen the whole trilogy, Gary, you need to also see Hot Fuzz and World's End. They're both, the whole trilogy is amazing. There's one joke that follows through all three movies when people jump over a fence, and it's done one way in one movie and different in the next and different in the next. but it's the same. Like, I swear to God, they use the same chunk of fence to do it. So
Probably did. Yeah. My favorite scene in Shaun of the Dead is when they're throwing records at the zombies. I'm going, like that's
no,
gonna
not
do
that one.
anything.
That's an early press of such and such.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Was it one that said, no, not that one, that says something, and then the other one picks it up and just throws it. like the records are gonna stop these things, you know.
Yeah.
Let's see. Might as well throw a paper airplane at them or something. But yeah,
the scene where the two groups of people pass, and there's like a version of each of them in each group. They're like the same group of people played by different people walking past, and it's like, oh, that's genius.
Yeah.
All right. I guess my last one comes from 2011, called Exit Humanity. This is a zombie movie that is taking place just right after the Civil War, and it's a very bleak thing. The main character, he comes back to his family, but it turns out they're gone, and he doesn't know where they are, so he goes and looks for them, and on the way he encounters these zombies. And back when it first came out, I used to describe it as because of it had the feel like The Walking Dead, the setting and everything meets the Civil War, you know. And it's I have not heard many people talk about this. I really wish that it come out on Blu-ray, because all this right now is on DVD. Even it says on the cover, it says Exit Humanity combines The Walking Dead and the Old West. And you feel bad for the main character, because, you know, he seems to have lost everything, and he's at one point, I believe he was ready to give up, but then for some reason he just continues on. And it's just the way he fights off these zombies. I mean, obviously I liked how in this one, because of its time period, you have no reference to zombies. You know, it's like a brand new phenomenon. Rather than some of them, like later on, if you do, you know, in modern settings and you don't have any reference to zombies, it's like, where have you been? Have you been in this, you know, little closet that you don't know what a zombie is? You know, these things walking at you that that look like, you know, rotting flesh falling off of them. You know, that doesn't look like anything normal to me. So, but this one, if you can get a hold of it, I don't think it's on any kind of streaming. So it might be on YouTube. If not, maybe just a trailer for it. But, you know, just check it out. And I think if you watch it, if you like a zombie movie set in the Old West, basically, it's a really good good acting. I mean, that lead character, you know, like I said, you feel bad for the guy, because it seems like he's lost everything. He's all on his own, and then these things are coming after him. And it's like, you know, it's like the guy can't catch a break. I mean, but that is my final one. It's got a 4-star rating. Someone says one of the more memorable sweeping zombie films in years. I kind of call it one of the more original ones, you know, because I think later on we had one that was a period piece, but I think this was the first zombie period piece film. but it was serious. The other one, I think it was Pride and Prejudice and Zombies or something like that, which was kind of more on the lighthearted side. But this one, I think if you like a serious zombie movie, this is a good one for you to check out.
Believe it or not, that other one was a novel first. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I almost
Okay.
novel, but I thought it might be a really
Yeah.
fun read. But that was came out about the same time as Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter came out as a novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a big, and that was a novel too. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very tempted to pick both of those up, but I never did.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that
So
it? Have we done
That-
all of our movies?
We've done all the
We've done
zombies.
all the zombie moons. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for all the recommendations that I hadn't heard of before. I have something to go watch now.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the whole point. I like that everybody had 5 different choices, so it leaves, like I say each time, it leaves the audience choices what to go for. You know, you got stuff all over back from the 30s up into almost modern, you know, with 2019, you know.
Yeah.
So you can't go wrong with that. You know, whatever your era that you like the best, you go, and if take a chance on some of them. Who knows? You might like them. So I want to thank everyone here for joining me on this. I appreciate it. Gary, Bill, and Lynn, I think we had a pretty good show and got a lot of good stuff out there for the people out there in YouTube land.
Always glad to do these. These are so fun every time.
Yep. Lots of fun. Enjoy.
I want to thank you for having me on. I know I'm just a guest, but y'all made me feel very welcome and let me blather on. So
Blathering is what we do here.
I'm pretty good at it too. So I feel like I fit right in.
All right. Well, this is episode 8, favorite zombie films, and back next month sometime with something else, episode 9.
Okay.
So again, thank you, and I'll talk with everyone soon.
Okay. See you later.
See ya. Thank you very much for watching this episode, and stay tuned for the next one.